My name is Rhonda Julian, and I'm a native of Boston, Massachusetts.
Uh, Rhonda, I met your uncle at a Starbucks, and we just sat down and we started talking. And then he said, I have this great niece in Massachusetts that just went through an ordeal, and we were talking healthcare and all that sort of stuff. And he said, you've got to talk to her. And you know what he did? He gave me a link to your website. It
hmm
was the most inspiring sight I have ever seen. And what I'd love for you to do is to tell your story, because I think it is something that, first of all, American women need to hear, and most importantly, young women, because these are things that they think they will never have to have, that would never happen to them. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your story?
Sure. Sure. Okay, I am now 30 years old, but when I was 29 in February of this year, so February 24th, my daughter, who's 6 years old, she elbowed me right in my breast. I went to the doctor 2 days later, and I'm like, my daughter elbowed me, and she's like, no, don't worry, we're gonna go and we'll get an ultrasound. Don't worry about it. Just to double check, no big deal, but it's probably just a cyst. So I said, okay, no big deal. Still mad at her, of course. And so 3 weeks later, on March 22nd, I went to the doctor to the ultrasound, and I got my ultrasound. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. And 5 hours later, I had done an ultrasound, a mammogram, and a biopsy. So I was doing a little research, while I was in between my sessions. I wasn't planning on all that. You plan for 1 hour ultrasound and then you're out of there, but it wasn't like that for me. So, I kind of heard from people, oh, Rhonda, don't worry. Out of the 92% of people that, they see kind of something that might look like cancer or what they call a lesion or something called a fibroadenoma, all these things that they toss around, I'm like, okay, so what's that? And I'll Google it real quick. And then it all was pointing in the direction of some type of cancerous cell. I think they knew, but they just didn't want to, pinpoint it right on the spot. So, okay, whatever. So a week passes and I find out, but I found out over the phone, which was fine for me because I don't really have to go in and be dramatic. But they said, Rhonda, your daughter saved your life. You said she elbowed you, and I said, yeah, she did. And meanwhile, my daughter's banging on the door, sliding down the door, trying to get in, like, Ma, what you doing? How come you locked me out? Like, obnoxious. And I'm like, you want to have cancer. For like 2 seconds, then I let her in, and she said, Mom, what's wrong? Why are you crying? And I said, well, I just found out you saved my life, and I had this little ball of poison growing in my breast, and if it weren't for you, then it could have gotten into my lungs and caused me not to breathe, or into my bones and caused my bones to break, or even caused me to die. But the doctor just told me that I'm going to be fine because of you. And I'm kind of in awe about that. I'm really grateful, and I'm sorry I was so hard on you for, elbowing me, but you still got to be careful. And she's like, oh, so I saved your life? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, hey, me. Hey, Uncle Russ. Did you hear I saved my mom's life? I found out about my cancer on a Thursday, and then that weekend was Easter, and then April 1st is where my official diagnosis came through Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston, and I found out that I had stage 2 invasive ductal carcinoma.
What does that
Uh,
affect?
so the invasive ductal carcinoma really targets the receptor cells of the ducts, the mammary ducts.
Okay.
And from my knowledge base, and I try to pick up as much as I can every time I go to my doctor, each type of cancer is tested for hormones. So you can get a progesterone, estrogen, and a HER2, HER2 receptor. Those three types of hormones are
They induce
tested.
a cancer growth.
So I'm positive for estrogen and I'm positive for progesterone, but I was negative for HER2. So that makes me a double positive.
You are in
Yeah.
one of those states that have uh, something that, well, actually now it is the Affordable Care Act. How did you find that interface between you and the medical system in Massachusetts, which is exactly what this Affordable Care Act is all about?
The Affordable Care Act is very important in my life because I'm a single mother and I am considered low income. And so I also came from out of state. I moved home with my family about a year and a half ago. It wasn't until January 13th of 2013, so just recently, that I was able to get insurance. And this was like completely a fluke thing, because who gets kidney stones? I got kidney stones, right?
Right.
On January 13th, and I didn't have insurance. So I went to the emergency room. I'm rolling around on the floor, throwing up in the emergency room, wailing. I've never felt so much pain in my life. They give me health insurance. 1 month later is when I got elbowed. So if I didn't have health insurance, it would have been a big issue for me. But the way that Massachusetts works, we do have health insurance, and they will put you on health insurance. And that is a very cool thing about my state. They'll make sure that you're taken care of in your basics. They actually require you to have health insurance. So when I was going through my diagnostic testing, everything was great. I was able to get this mammogram that, people under 40 are supposedly not allowed to get.
Let me ask you this. How does it make you feel mentally? In other words, that even as a young person that wouldn't have the $100,000 or $200,000 to cover that bill, that knowing that that the system is there to give you a helping hand. Don't that allow you to go through your treatment in a more positive manner?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think anybody who has the support system that they need medically, that they don't have to worry about the actual bills. I mean, when it comes to parking and food and getting in there, and you're working or you're not working, and you're also creating a deficit in your income by going there every day and having to pay for these little things. It does add up, but not having to pay for your these bills is a big deal also. I mean, I am grateful. I am so grateful to be from Massachusetts because of how streamlined, and it's very seamless,
Right.
And of course, not everything is perfect, and not everything can be helped. Nobody can really save the world, but what we can do is try and come up with something a little bit more that makes sense across the board,
Now let's talk about what you are doing, because one of the other things that really got me wanting to talk to you is your foundation, and you've been flying around the country teaching people about what's been going on with you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so I mentioned briefly about my website, that I had transferred all my Facebook posts over to my website, and people were like, "Oh, you should do this and you should do that," and that created a lot of attention with my hometown, and they wanted to do this fundraiser for me, and I'm like, "Who does fundraisers? This is awkward. I don't want to take money from anybody, even though, of course, I'm in a position of need, but it's still very awkward." So I said, "Well, okay, fine, because now I have everybody looking at me. Let me at least say thank you in such a way that matters, and flowers to me are not good enough." So I said, okay, I have no eyebrows. At the time, I had no eyebrows, no hair, no nothing. And I'm like, well, if I just paint my face, I can represent all people who have cancer, not just breast cancer, not just women or men, but I have no identity, but I can create identity. And what my doctors have done, they've revived me. They helped me to live. My community has come together to support me. They're reviving me. If I brought color, I could do it through artwork. And so that's kind of what the root of my foundation is really, creating confidence and beauty in cancer. I kind of say, there is beauty in breast cancer, because it's true. Like, I walk around with no wig all the time, don't care one bit, but there are people who care. And if we only could create some way of confidence about us, then people would start taking their wigs off, and there would be more awareness. And then people would start checking themselves, and then we would be more proactive in the prevention process, or early detection at the very least. So that is the basis of my foundation, is creating that confidence and seeing the positive in everything. Because if you're early detected, then you're kind of like streamlining right through. You kind of don't have to worry or be so scared, or it doesn't have to be as dramatic. It's cancer no longer becomes this scary, frightful disease. It doesn't have to be like that. I think I'm very lucky, but if I was paying attention, maybe I would have felt the lump. I was never paying attention enough. So now, as far is my reach. I call it a reach because I don't realize, and I don't think anybody realizes their impact on somebody. So like when you tell me you're all the way in Texas and you're reading my stuff and I'm affecting your life, that is amazing to me. And I have a friend who plays for the Detroit Lions. His name is Steven Tulloch. He's one of the captains for the team. And I called him and I said, dude, I need to figure out how to do a foundation and fast. I'm planning this big fundraiser in 2 months. This is like 2 weddings in 2 months, and I have no idea what a foundation starts with nothing. I need your help. And he's like, wait, you have breast cancer? And I'm like, yeah, but who cares about that? We need to work on this foundation. And so he's like, wow, can you come to my event? And so I'm like, yep. 2 weeks later, I'm in Detroit. I walked into this beautiful restaurant. It's called the Tremonti in Troy, Michigan. And I started to cry because I was like, wow, they made a shrine of Rhonda.
Wow.
It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen because what they did was post all of my beautiful pictures that I'd been painted. I was just sending them to him to be like, hey, look what I did. This is how I want my foundation. Meanwhile, he's telling his assistant to go print them in big posters, 3x2 and 5x7, like 5x7 feet though.
Wow.
So I'm like, oh my goodness. I get there and I ended up speaking in front of over, I think it was like 100 women who had breast cancer as well, or survivors. And that was like probably one of the most incredible things. This particular picture symbolizes my daughter saving my life. And it has her on her cheek a little bit of a cyclone because she's, like Tasmanian devil.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it really means a whole lot because you have a little bit of chaos, but the whole world of peace. And sometimes things are divine in cause. And I really wanted to express that everything is going to be fine. This is small. There are way worse things than cancer in my world, anyway. In my world, I could totally exchange cancer and be like, listen, that was not so bad. It's really not so bad.
Well, Rhonda, let me tell you, this has been a great experience of mine.